Hello, everyone. So, we are going to talk about the post war boom. This is immediately following the Great Depression. So, we are going to talk about the post war economic boom from 1950 to 1970, the white collar boom, and the rise of consumerism. Also, going to touch about the baby boom. Additionally, the rise of the Sun Belt and suburbia. So, the end of the Great Depression. The start of World War II ended the Great Depression. A war economy means there's a need for weapons, supplies, and jobs. More jobs meant more money. More money meant a better economy. At the end of the war, the economy was strong, and this prosperity lasted for 25 years. They say the only thing that can cure a Great Depression is a war. So, victory. Now what? Well, there were post war anxieties. The first was, would the Great Depression return? The GNP, the gross national product, fell. Prices rose 33%, and 4.6 million workers went on strike. The Taft-Hawley Act made unions weaker, against Truman's wishes. Then we had veterans returning from war. The Readjustment Act of 1944, or better known as the GI Bill, was put into place. This sought to reintegrate 15 million veterans back into society, included 1 year of unemployment benefits, financial aid to go to college, and a Veterans Administration, which provides $15 billion in cheap loans to build homes. So, cheap loans encourages new houses being built. So, soldiers began building new homes. This led to new jobs in construction workers, electricians, carpenters, plumbers, painters, and roofers. Many of the houses we see around today are built during this boom. I know the house I grew up in was a 1950s house. And many of the houses surrounding Platt are from that era as well. So, we have the economic boom from 1950 to 1970. This is known as America's Golden Age. Income shot up 6% of the world's population, yet we had 40% of the world's wealth. There were 40 million new jobs in the 1950s, and there's a shift from blue collar work to white collar work. The middle class expanded, as did ownership of cars and TVs. By the end of the 1950s, 90% of people had a TV. Women entered the workforce, be it the service industry. Cheap oil fed the boom because Europeans controlled the oil of the Middle East. 90% American children were in school. Farm productivity skyrockets. Only 2% of the nation are farmers, though. Permanent war economy begins. So we see aerospace, plastics, electronics. We see high tech innovations result from military spending, such as passenger jets and computers. We see the impact of the automobile. By 1960, there are 60 million cars in America, and families are starting to have two cars per family instead of one. In 1945, there were only 26 million cars. By 1960, there were 60 million cars. With the rise of cars came the rise of car culture, the rise of car-based entertainment and food, such as drive-in theaters, drive-in restaurants, places such as McDonald's and Sonic. You can even go to Southington and visit the drive-in movie theater, which is still in existence. So all this stuff was created in that 1950s car culture. We also saw the creation of the interstate highway system. The government decided to help this move to the suburbs. So we saw the Interstate Highway Act of 1956. 41,000 miles of highway were built. They connect major American cities. The impact, lots and lots of jobs. It's easier to vacation, take road trips. You see the creation of places such as Disney World and Disneyland. And it makes suburbs practical. Is a picture of the Dwight D. Eisenhower Interstate Highway System. You can see generally in the east, there's more highways. And as we go out west, they get a little bit fewer and far in between. These are the national highways. We'll do a video on these highways at another point. And here is the entire highway network. So the blue is the interstate national highway. The red is the traditional national highway. The green is a national highway network that's not on a system. So these are your smaller highways that connect smaller cities or highways to other highways. And then the gray is another highway system. You can see more of the gray in the east than in the west. For example, if you're familiar with the Boston Post Road, that goes from Boston to New York, highway systems. Another road that would be part of that system would be Broadway in New York. Broadway in New York is part of a highway. It's not an interstate, but it is a highway that goes all the way upstate New York. So, additionally, we have what's called a baby boom. So, millions of men have been gone for almost 4 years, so they had to make up for lost time. This led to a population explosion from 1946 to 1964. 78 million Americans were born. That is 26% of the population. This is a huge boost to the economy because just imagine how much these extra people will absorb in food, clothing, gadget, housing, and in services. But later on down the road, this becomes a drag on Social Security, which is what we're seeing currently. We saw the rise of the nuclear family, which is a husband, a wife, and lovely little children. At this time, grandparents stopped living with the family, and 3 was the ideal number of children. Also, during this time, we saw a solidification of gender roles. Men went out and worked and earned the money. Women were the housewives and kept the home and raised the children. Children were obedient and well behaved. This all came from the 1950s. We saw a rise in consumerism. Consumerism is buying as much as one could, even using credit to do so. It was no longer a penny saved is a penny earned. Americans spent money on lots of things, including new conveniences, refrigerators, washers, dryers, dishwashers, ovens. These were all items that didn't really exist at some point, and it made life easier. We start seeing the beginning shopping malls, which are actually currently dying. And as we spoke about before, Americans also bought TVs. So we saw, with consumerism, we saw more leisure time. We see fast food such as McDonald's, and we see leisure activities such as Disneyland. Television becomes a huge part of our culture. In 1946, there were only about 7,000 TVs, but by 1953, Americans bought 7 million. By the end of the 1950s, 90% of American families owned a TV. And at that time, the average cost of a television was about $1,000. But due to the prosperity of the 1950s, many Americans were able to buy one. We also see the rise of products from TV shows. For example, the Davy Crockett picture gun, Golden Fluffo for better tasting pies, and Mr. Potato Head. So, then we see people migrating to the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt states are states in the South and the West. So, think California, Los Angeles, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. During the 1950s, Americans began to flock to these states. Reasons? Well, the air condition, lots of jobs in the South, especially in the oil, space, and defense industries. The American economy is rolling. Americans made up 6% of the global population, but produced 50% of the world's products. So, because this is after World War One, so a lot of the world is trying to rebuild their countries after being destroyed. We see a major shift in political power. Then we see the rise of the suburbs. Cars mean you can enjoy the city, just not have to live there. You don't have to deal with crime, congestion, noise, and other not nice things. That is all for today. See you next video.